Oh, it should be good. Yeah, we'll have to have it far away from here. It's just because it's close to this. So just, if she's there, probably there. I'll try now. Hey everyone, my name is Morel Jones. I'm the director here at the Pueblo Heritage Museum. So grateful for everyone being here today. And I'm really excited to introduce our speakers here in a moment who have worked really hard on this presentation about the Colorado State Hospital. First of all, I want to also bring attention to some flyers that we have near the check-in table for upcoming events. If you have any young people in your life or know of young people, we have upcoming classes for young people, our Indigenous storytelling, which are a la carte, so you can attend just one class, as well as our heritage crafts, which actually are taught by a couple of our board members and volunteers, Haydee Kort, who greeted you today. And then we also have every third Friday chair yoga in this room. So there's those flyers out there. And then our next Heritage Night, we don't have the flyer out yet, but it will be in this room. I believe it's July 19th. It's usually every third Wednesday. And we'll be diving into the Buffalo Soldiers and James Beckworth, even having someone as him. Kennedy Pugh will be speaking for us and potentially someone else. So yeah, really exciting stuff coming up. I also want to invite you all to know that tonight is free. And if you're so called to, even if it's 50 cents, $1 or more, we have a donation box right here as you walk in. Feel free to do that. And we also even have a sign on the door. I believe it's still there. Yeah. Want to do that digitally, and you can also do it on our website, the Heritage. Every donation helps keep heritage alive here. And I want to invite, if you're also called to do so, to come and look at volunteering with us. If you sign in, there's actually a place where you could check the box to actually volunteer or be considered. If it's just one time, that's great. If you want to do it regularly, that's super. We're a volunteer-run organization with just a staff of 2, so really grateful for any of that. We have opportunities for speaking. If that's something you want to do, we go to school, we have opportunities that are a bit more quiet here in the museum. So really something for everyone. So without further ado, I want to introduce 2 speakers. I actually let them introduce themselves, but we created this idea out of an intention to really bring light to more history of mental wellness. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic to Richard here first, let him introduce himself, and then Nell, and that's all it for me. So thank you all. Let's give a round of applause to start off the night.
Thank you. I wasn't planning on using the
Oh yeah,
mic,
you don't have to use the mic.
so I'm going to turn it off for a second.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there you go. That way it
All the
doesn't.
way up then for now?
Yeah.
Okay. I used to be a teacher, so it's not too hard to project, but if I'm not loud enough, let me know. My name is Richard Guenther, and we found that there's pretty affordable real estate next to the state hospital only a couple of years ago. And about a year and a half ago, one time we ventured over the fence, actually went 2 blocks. So I live so close to it to the museum that you could throw a rock and hit the top. So I have to walk down 2 blocks and then back up 2 blocks to get to the museum. But I went there and I met Nell and Nancy Hall, who is here tonight. Is the 3rd member of the group that run the place, and it's been really fun. She volunteered a couple weeks before me, and then I volunteered, and that's been it. We haven't got anybody else yet, so but we're thinking we might have a new person, some helping out. But basically, it's 3 people doing it, and no.
You know him? Okay, well, my name's Nell Mitchell. Yes, you know that by now. You know more? Perfect.
Oh yeah, put it right up to your mouth, almost like yeah.
Right up to our mouth.
Yeah.
You hear? You want to hear?
There you go.
All right. I don't do this, you know? I don't do this. Anyway, my husband and I started this museum in 1980. And by getting it on the National Register first was the very, very first thing that we did, because otherwise they were gonna tear that building down, and the building was the superintendent's residence. Well, maybe not all of you do. Nice building, and it's something that we did not want to be torn down. Superintendent at the our superintendent for several years, very nice lady. So she said, yeah, go ahead, do it. And of course, it started out as a conference center. And we do allow people to come in and have guests in there if you want to do that. I mean, it's $5, I mean, you know. So if you ever want to do something like that with the and but anyway, as I said, we finally got it on the on our 100th anniversary. I saw all of these records, chair and this with the wrapper around it. The things, I mean, most cousin and I decided to go, and we knew where they were some because I worked here. So I wanted them. They were just laying in the dirt, geriatrics building. So yeah, I would back up the car with it, shove them in there every time we made a trip there. So but the museum is very it's a very nice. I mean, all kinds of artifacts in there. There, in fact, does anybody one of them goes across here like this? It's a barber shop apron. In other words, nice. So that's what you're saying. It's very, very, very good.
Is it something we can have?
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
If they want, I mean, it's.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Butcher.
Butcher.
And we have one of them to our long-term superintendent. Others brought all of his, everything, all of his awards. He keep it over. I mean, it was amazing that they would give that all to this museum. So. For him, we, as a board, we have
Keep it here. We gotta keep it
Oh.
here.
Yeah. Maybe I should put take. And we have a room set up for doctors and learning. We have a lot of information on our dairy farm. How many of you remember that dairy farm that we had out? The patients loved it, just loved it, because that's part of the therapy. They planted everything, you know, took care of the chickens, did whatever else they would have making there, and they lived on. You know, something to do, and it was really for them. But then when they let it, Richard is going to explain that to you. Yeah, and that's when we have. And they already have therapy, but it was sad. And of course, we were getting rid of more patients at that time too. Anyway, we're continuing to try to keep the artifacts there. I get some more in here, I don't know what to do with it, but we do text in there, it's just huge, I used to so many years. There's just a lot to write down, you know, because they were so, it was the only way we could actually, because they were just too bad off. Customer, you know, not worth it, you know. They will do that, but at least we have medication. Back then, the other patients, they didn't have medication.
All right. So the beginning, I started when I first came over there to volunteer. I noticed that there was, well, we had our sessions list of all the artifacts, but it was only a printout of the spreadsheet. We didn't have the actual spreadsheet. We still don't. So we have someone working on that now, but I want to try to figure out what happened in the beginning. And so I kind of went back as far as I could to try to understand. And of course, Nell answered a lot of questions and has done a lot of research on it. We have some things that you can see up here afterwards. We'll do a question and answer session after the presentation. Then you can come up also and check out some of the things. So she wrote this book. And it's really good. So it goes over that, and that's for sale at the museum. $10. Is it 10 or 8? Right? Is it 10? Okay.
I can go down.
So this was the first superintendent, and he was a Civil War veteran and a doctor. And it all started on 40 acres with the Chilcott House on it. And the Chilcott House was, the 40 acres were donated by Chilcott, but then the improvements to the property were sold for $13,000, as near as I can figure out. There's some dispute on how much he got for it, but I'll give you some evidence coming up why I think it's that. But that was the building that they housed the first male patients in. And it was where the superintendent had to be, and where the all the workers. So there weren't a lot at that time. They built this for the female patients. So this was the other building. So there were two buildings in 1879. Right over the This was the first of the big buildings. So the Mail Center was built in 1883. This style of architecture is based on the Kirkbride plan. And they call them, some of them are referred to as bat wings. In some places, they would make the main building and then the wings would just keep spreading off at an angle behind them. And it looked like a bat from above. They didn't do that here. They actually just went straight up from them. But that was the first big building. And then this one came in 1888 and it faced it. And that's the second big building. Also in the Kirkbride style. You can see it's missing its left half. They built that later. So there should be another wing over here. And they built that later. This is something you can see at Rose Lawn. And you can see that Nell sponsored this. And that's where Dr. Toms is buried with his wife. of the grades that I took. I was first learning all this. So here's some of the chronological developments. I'm just going to go over some of the superintendents, the number of patients that we've had at different eras. Key dates in hospital history, a very selected list. I just almost random. If it was music, I kind of included it. And then hospital maps of various eras. So here are the superintendents. I won't read them all to you, but some of the ones to look at or that are kind of stand out would be Zimmerman, of course, because he was there for a long time. And he was the first to live in the museum. That was his house. The other person who lived in it was Meredith, number 6 there, from 63 to 76. Then we had Dr. Kort, who was the first female superintendent. And then after 2018, they no longer call it superintendent. It's called Chief Executive Officer. Here's a picture of Zimmerman. So he really turned it into a city within a city. And I'm doing some of the research on that, but that is really when it became a huge institution. And I'll show you some pictures of that. And there's a picture of Dr. Kort, just because that's Nell's second favorite superintendent after Zimmerman. Here's the patient population through decades, and that thing is on the bottom of the screen covering up the...
It says hi.
Okay, let's see if that works. I don't see.
There you go.
Whoops. There you go. Got it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Wait.
There you go.
Thank you.
We did it.
I taught computer science, but I didn't use Windows or Macs.
So in 1880, were there other state hospitals, or was there just this one?
Just this one.
It's crazy.
So I'll talk a little bit about the opening day coming up, but because it opened in 1879, you can see by 1880 there were 38 patients. That's pretty much filling up that house and then the other house for the women. And then you see the numbers just go way up. They even get higher than what is on here, because I think 1961 was maybe the highest, but I have that coming a little later in the slide. 1970 is easy to remember. That's not a mistake. And then in 1980, it went down to about 800, and under 500 even for the last 10 years or so. That's where we're at.
That's because they had medications, huh?
There's other reasons too with decentralization, which we'll talk a little bit about. I'll explain that when it comes up, but that's when the big drop came in the number of patients. Here's just a few things for no particular, so 1879, 11 patients came. They had been outsourced to an asylum in Illinois, Jacksonville, Illinois, outside of Chicago. And they brought them back by train with sheriff and deputies and brought them here. So then you got the two big buildings that went up. So there was with Dr. Toms, and he did a lot of work with not much money. And because of that, there was a hearing on and an investigation on him. The Pueblo chieftain was real supportive of him, by the way. And so they established a board of lunacy commissioners, and we have a stamp at the In fact, if you take one of my business cards, they stamp it with the official seal of the Board of Lunacy Commissioners. But that has to be the time when micromanagement really peaked, because they published in I think it was 98 actually. They published the rules for the rules and regulations of the state hospital. And it's a document that we have, and there was an article in the lore about it even in the past. And it's just amazing how much they expected people to work. Nurses had 4 hours off a week. And they had to live there, and they, they couldn't be married. So then we got some other things like electricity, the amusement hall. Motion pictures were in 1911. By 1912, they were showing movies to over 600 patients in an afternoon in the amusement hall. And the projectors are huge. They're kind of like the size of a car. And they had multiple ones because they were probably breaking all the time and they had to use a different one. First pool table, I don't know, it's Pueblo, so. And then the Board of Lunacy Commissioners were replaced in 1915. Powerhouse is built on the site. Name changed from Colorado Insane Asylum to Colorado State Hospital in 1917. 1939, 65 kids from Pueblo in the youth project administration, one of the WPA basically. They put in speakers and a central sound system. It had 5 miles of wire, over 119 speakers, so that every building could hear someone at the control point, where they had a microphone, a PA system, they could amplifiers, they had a record player that could play 16 the whole. So there we have 1961. You can see that the number got really high, and then decentralization begins, and the numbers go way down.
Were they still sending patients from out of state at that point?
No, they weren't ever really.
I thought the ones from Illinois came then.
That's only because before we had our own asylum here, they had to put them somewhere.
Okay.
And so there were ads in the Denver paper on almost a daily basis for that asylum. In paper. So if you wanted to, maybe someone in your family you thought needed to be institutionalized,
Okay.
the asylum in Illinois advertised in the Denver paper on almost a daily basis. Big business.
Where does there was another one that was over by Target area. It's another institutional building that at one period in time was over in that area.
Are we talking about one of the Woodcroft?
There you go.
Okay.
And was that part of this, or was it separate?
At one time it was part of it. That was quite a bit later. Not later than 98. But, and then at the end of Adrienda, there was also the Woodcroft.
Right.
Uh,
Charlotte in that.
100,000 patients. 92 bodies discovered while digging near Hood Street. They weren't really discovered then. I mean, there had been rumors that all along that there had been bodies buried at the hospital. There's a huge investigation that went on about that, and I think we have maybe 17 theses that people have written about it. And there's 2 professors, 3 now, that are working with us on different things related to that. You saw the lady who talked about the dental archaeology, the PCHS. She works with me on some of that stuff because there was a lot of stuff going on, and there was a lot of funding to figure out how it had happened. I didn't choose to focus on that tonight, but I could certainly, if you'd ever want to come down to the museum, we could talk. In '95, there's when Nell got the historical and the what do you call it, the registry of National Register of Historical Places, and then the museum opened in '98. Oops, that's just a big blue arrow to remind me to go to the next slide. This is one of my favorite pictures we have in our archive. This is 1940s aerial view, and if you know where the 13th Street entrance is today, that building on the left that was the nurse's residence. That's right here. The museum, whoever took this picture, right there. One of those cottages is still up. It was the East Cottage, which I'm thinking it's this one right here, maybe. The easternmost of them. Now, on that side were the male cottages, the male buildings, and on this side were the female. I believe I've got that right, but I could be 50%, I could be wrong. But no, I'm pretty sure that's right. And then there's the music hall in the middle there.
Which one?
The one that's in the
So I see it with a horseshoe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then behind that was the hydrotherapy building. There's the power plant.
Show where the greatest one.
I didn't bring my laser pointer. Is there a pointer? Oh, I'll try it. Yeah, here we go. Thank you. Great idea. Right there. So when they were going to build the San Carlos, right here would be where they put the correctional facility would be, and then this would be where Hood Street is. Bodies. That's graveyard number 2. Graveyard number 1 that is here down near down here that I still can't find. And Nell knows where it is, and I've got to get it.
So bodies supposedly of patients or inmates or?
Yes, but first they believe it was probably from the flu epidemic or something else. But then after they've analyzed them, they're pretty darn sure that they all came right in the first 18. But he had no budget, so. Here's 1953, and this is all the southern campus yet. So 17th Street would be above the map or above the top there. But superintendent's house is over there. Basically the same kind of thing you saw in that last picture. And then this is 1962. You can see it starts changing. We still have a lot of the buildings down here, and that's where everything was before that I showed you the picture of. But then up there we got a whole bunch now.
That's 17th Street in the middle.
Yep. And then this one's turned 90 degrees, but this would be the south campus, and this is 17th Street, that's north campus. And you can see that there's not that many buildings down here. So here's the museum. This is the East Cottage. All the rest are gone. This is a new building, corrections building. And then versus residence, and then all of these ones are gone. And this is basically what it's like now. So 17th Street is right here. Here's the little museum, and it's orange because it's part of the state hospital. Nothing else over here is, except that. 16, which is the IFP building trades. And then it's all up there. So when you drive past on 17th and you see all the concertina wire, that's really Department of Corrections, just the shaded yellow on here. But then behind that is the state hospital. So the geriatrics building would be 121 on there, if you can see the number.
Big Star Wars.
This building here is the Hawkins. That's the most recent building. Okay, special topics. Tunnels under the hospital. You want to talk about that? Okay. Nell likes the tunnels.
Well, we have, both, the north and the south campus. We have,
There you go.
have over 3.9. So,
Miles of
through the
tunnel.
tunnel.
Yeah.
Through the tunnel.
Boilers.
Boilers,
Yeah.
yes. That's what they were putting in for heat at that time. My husband and I went to one of those tunnels. Starting over there on the north south campus, and it was very close to the facilities department. Very dirty. It's not a place you want to walk to. But interesting.
That picture might be, would that be more the,
Yeah, that's,
like the brick?
that would be one of them, and that's the, but these are all marked now, so that's. Or the other ones on the south, we have one. But, yeah, so, but they're still using it. We actually want to have one that goes to the museum. Just the dirt, and can't see anything, so, yeah.
So what was Camp Falcon?
Hmm?
What was
Oh.
Camp Falcon?
Camp Falcon, she's asking about building 108.
Oh, yeah. That didn't, that was a thing that was that were there for quite some time, I guess.
That's the food.
And of course, this is the nicer part of it, as you can tell. Also, and we used to put food for the patients. That was that way. And it was. But we don't do that anymore because we don't have that many.
Oops. All right.
It's about it. Yeah, for me. Yeah.
Well, then this must be about me then. The books of insanity. I have these up here, so I'm gonna give you a little quiz here, but this was something that physiognomy was related to phrenology. And it's one of the things that professor from Utah is studying when they look through our records for that kind of language that they use. This goes way back though. The pictures that I'm going to show you, they're drawings, but they were developed from patients in an asylum in London. And 13 papers were presented on them, each with a different type of insanity. Dorothy De Niro donated copies of these to us, and this is an example. So the drawing is on the right, and that's what they would use to diagnose the patient. Like if they look like that, then they must be suffering from. So yes, because that's part of the quiz. But there's the actual drawing, and there's the. It was like a stone engraving or a stone carving, or stone something. But I was going to write this up as an article for the lore, and I never got around to it. But I did make this. So if you want to try to guess which is which, and the answers are up here that you can see afterwards. They're not easy. Now, maybe, but anybody want to try one?
Just tell us.
Oh no, that's why you got to come up and look at the. Okay, so well, I'll give you one of them. The one with the cross is religious melancholies. The cross and Bibles too. Her elbows on Bibles. So that's yes. These are so I've written 4 articles that are in the Pueblo lore. If you get the lore and you didn't read them, you missed some good stuff. So the first one was about the first 11 patients, and I tried to find out as much as I could about them. Yeah, it turned out 2 of the guys from October 23rd of 1879, they died 11 days apart in 1912 at the hospital. So if you're interested, those articles are up here, and Judy from the library upstairs will, they're for sale if you want to buy them. And then I wrote one on the patient, Dr. James Reines. After that, one busy Saturday in state hospital history, and then one on the 13th Street Review is the most recent. This is the one on the one busy Saturday. I blurred the names a little bit at request, but then this didn't get put in the lore, so I had the photo, might as well use it. But this is the month of August 1908, and it was usually 5 or 6 patients coming in a month before this. And then all of a sudden, right here on the 8th, there's 37 names. And I wanted to figure out what happened. So then I look in our other books. We've got books all over the place, and they wrote names in multiple places, and then you can kind of confirm. You can see here that Margaret, Anna, Elizabeth, they all go with the exact same order. And they all do. So they all came in on the one day. This is a book of what they came in with, the female possessions. So this lady came in with a felt hat, the calico dresses, but I don't see one. They were very popular. And the reason why they all came was this building opened up. And so they had them up in Denver, and they brought them all down. And then there were just as many the next Saturday, and the next Saturday, and then the building was full in a month. This is from the article on the 13th Street Review. It's kind of a neat thing that they published inside of the state hospital. There's the letterhead from it, and just a couple. There were some cartoons made by patients. There were also staff members who worked on it, and There's a lot of gossip and interesting stuff. Yes.
What do you attribute these weekend women roundups that you're taking to the state hospital?
So they didn't have room here. And in fact, that has always been a problem with superintendents that got taken on trial for refusing patients from the Denver area. They just had so many patients coming from Arapahoe and then later Denver. So they were backlogged up there. And then they built these buildings and that bring down 37 at a time. It was one whole car and train.
Were there things, I'm curious about the political aspects and women starting to speak out against provisional and traditional ways of being.
They did it with men too. I just happened upon that one. But in 1904, there's actually the time when they opened up a male cottage and the same thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And in the 50s and 60s, when the population spiked,
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on that?
Can I answer them after the?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just go over this quick and then we'll get to that because I'm running a little late from where I want to be. But so here's some stuff on the museum. So the entrance, and I'll show you how to get there because a lot of people don't trust Google. It will not take you there. And open Tuesdays and Saturdays, 10 to 4. And the list of the colorful characters at the bottom. There's where we are on the map, but Google doesn't know to do this and then put you there. It takes you up in that area.
Where is your house?
And it was the first house built on that block, and the guy who owned it ended up as patient. Yeah. There's 13th and Francisco.
And that was the nurses.
That was the nurse's residence. So if you go in that entrance and then you just turn, that's turning to the right. And that's the museum. That's in the front entrance area. That is the front entrance. These are some pictures of back in there was the Zimmerman had 2 daughters, and this was a playhouse. So here we have, so this is just some of the things you can find in the museum. I'm going to go through them kind of quick because you should come and see them. But we have the restraint chair. This is the straight jacket that we brought. Here you can see Nancy. Favorite thing to do. Unclaimed patient properties. This is one of the exhibits. That's the exhibit, but these are some of the pictures that were possession of patients that never got picked up. That's the Zimmerman room, the painting of them by a patient. There's the PBX she was talking about. There's my favorite part, all the old books. This room is upstairs and we leave it set up kind of to show what the house would have been like if it wasn't just a museum. And all that furniture was from the nurse's residence. There's the shock treatment that she was talking about. So this is medical room, and on the other side there's things like the autopsy saw. More of the science and research area. These were on the original Mail building. It became the old gray building, called that, and then it was administrative building. This is like a door, like a ringer doorbell. You pull it down, you can pull a string and a bell would ring. And then that's the door knob itself. And then two of the windows in there, going down the stairs. So these are just some of the books that I've gotten to know very well. There's the original $13,000 purchase of the land, or the improvements to the land. That's in one of our books. There's our first patient. One of the 11 died from convulsions in 1880. If you see form of insanity, epileptic, cause injury to head, he got in a fight, then someone hit him with a metal bar. And he started doing very erratic behavior up in Denver. So you can find him in historic newspaper articles. There's the doctor I wrote about who was widowed because he killed his own wife. He was running a private asylum up in Denver. He killed his wife. Well, he had patients up there. One of them attacked him. 2 others escaped. When one of them escaped, they went into the Archer Canal in Denver and drowned. And then he said, I can't do this, and let all the other patients go. Spent a couple of very depressing weeks up there, and then shot his wife one night and ended up coming down. He was here, and you can see that he was, well, this says he eloped. That means he escaped. And then this says discharged, improved, less than a year later, I believe. Yeah. These are some of the things that we have on old records. It's sensitive because it could be, the way they would talk about patients could be tough to read. But some of this is very common. Things electricity was used on. There was a lot of hearing of that. Things they are being poisoned. That's very common amongst patients. This is from our book of medicine, and that's whiskey. There's all kinds of things like arsenic, but I just chose whiskey. We have books like this that you could look at for hours, and they have the old letterheads. So this book is from 1899, and it's all the receipts that all the bills that they paid, and they would just glue them in the book, and they're still there. So they're really fun to look at. And then here's just a few pictures that are in our archives. So this is the old gate at 13th Street entrance. And that's Shorty.
Yeah.
And this is, I wrote about the 13th Street Review, and I thought he might have been the editor, but then I went with another name because I thought it might be that guy. But I had his niece and his nephew say, no, that's our uncle. And his name was Glenn. He was the first person born in Glenn. And there's an update coming in the lore that should be coming out this next issue. And there's him working on the newspaper. He lived in the nurses' building. And that was in the basement where they made the newspaper. Some of the pictures of the old buildings. And then we have pictures of what it was like in the hospital at times. And then we got a whole bunch of pictures about the bodies that were found on campus. I gotta thank Judy because this presentation is less than 3 hours old. So we could do if you have any questions, and Nell, if you want to, Nell's good at answering questions because she knows a lot of them.
Is this the only mental hospital in the state?
It's Fort Lyons.
They in Fort Logan opened up in during decentralization, and they took a lot of the patients at that time.
What does decentralization mean?
Okay, so decentralization, I used to be a teacher, and I think the best explanation is it's like inclusion. So instead of having special ed kids in their own room, they would have them in all the rooms with everybody else. Well, the hospital had all these specialized buildings that the wards would tend to have a certain type of patient in them. And then they said, let's not do that anymore. And there were other things like some people were, mentally retarded people they thought they shouldn't be here. So then they didn't have them in the hospital anymore.
We came up with medicine.
Yeah, yep. So they could get rid of, there's many reasons. Nancy has been researching this because it's been driving her nuts and I nuts to try to explain why the numbers went down so much. But
Your dates on there were in the 60s that happened, not
Yes.
so much in the 80s when Reagan just, because that's what I had in my head until I saw that in the 60s, so I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that there was a point in the 60s.
But the sixties would make sense from the mentally handicapped people understanding that they don't need to be in society.
Yep.
Richard, yes,
In the 60s, they started opening around health units.
yeah, in about 1960, in about 1960, they started trying to move people out of the, state home and training school in Wheat Ridge and Grand Junction. And eventually they started moving them down here. I had a foster brother who was one of those people. And a hospital. And then after a few years, then they started moving them out to the group homes, like you see all around Pueblo West. So that probably took a big chunk out of there, I think. And then, like I said, medicine and whatever that started.
yeah, it was Fort Logan, opened up in 61, and that was in Dempster's.
Richard, they decided that they wanted the people in the home area where they had come from. So they did outsourced clinics, and that's why they transferred the people. If they were from the Western Slope, then they sent them back to the Western Slope, thinking they could out clinics.
Yeah, but they also rearranged all the buildings at the hospital to be a particular region. And we have pictures that you really should come down and see. They're really great. When they had the soldiers from Fort Carson come down and they moved all the patients into different buildings. They moved some of them up.
Was there an adolescent unit at the state hospital?
Yes. Yeah, and I think it shows up on, we have a whole folder on that.
It was to the west of Geriatric.
Yeah,
Were they population, the group?
I have to pump on that one.
Upper right of the geriatric.
Oh, yeah, 126, right? Yeah, would be,
Called the Children's Treatment Center.
yeah, it isn't on here, but that's where, but they still have. I think they still have adolescent. That part's not history. That's now.
Yeah.
So, this facility here, if you go back to your other slide there, and kind of
One of the maps?
And this of the original, there you go. What happened to these buildings that were there? Did they burn? Did they?
No, they tore them down.
Just tore them down.
Yep.
Question around now. So we need somebody to look for those, got metal detectors. Permission to go metal detect?
That's how it is.
But
We
you're
only
saying,
have jurisdiction inside the museum.
you said part of it's Department of Correction, part of what we're looking at here, quite a
Well, this is 1940s, but,
right. But part of that is now Department of Correction stuff.
yes, I mean, the East Cottage, which was part of the state hospital, that's corrections.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are vacant buildings, those light blue ones, do they belong to the state hospital?
They used to, yeah,
So they're just empty buildings, but they still belong, and they're still there. Wow.
How were they evaluated for admittance slash incarceration? What, they were not free to leave, right? So
it was pretty open.
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. There wasn't even a female maximum security wing at the state hospital until after the Doris Frost incident where the nurse let a patient, helped a patient escape. That's in the 80s.
Well, just by saying escape makes me think that they weren't free to go.
There weren't fences.
Okay.
She got out by saying she was waiting for a pizza delivery. And then when a worker came in, she ran out the door. And then nurse had driven up the ex-nurse had driven up an automobile there. And she just got in and they left.
But a doctor in Greeley says this person needs to be institutionalized. And they send him to Pueblo.
Those are court orders usually.
Okay. So it is court ordered or court mandated.
Yes, and if it's a forensic case, then there's a whole extra degree of complexity because then you got the sanity issue on top of that.
So they had patients in there that had committed hypothetically murder due to insanity, and then you had Down's kids in there too.
And epileptics.
And alcohol. And hystericals, which were usually women.
Yeah, that's of course that the men had their wives.
Yeah. And I wanted to add something because my background's in social work about decentralization. And a lot of that occurred because there were so many, the situations in psychiatric homes or facilities, museums were deplorable. The conditions were deplorable. The people that were there were treated, very badly, or they weren't treated at all. They were just left to fend for themselves, and they'd go after each other. And there's that whole history that I don't know. Does the museum cover any of that now?
No.
No.
I don't understand. The private homes
No, the hospitals.
had deplorable conditions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not all of them, but historically, they were just kind of put there and left to rot. Not
But not
necessarily here. Yeah, I don't know what the conditions were here.
Yeah, I do a lot of research for people who contact Nell and say, I think someone in our family had been a patient there. And I try to find them in the records. What I'll usually do then is try to give them some background on what era they were patients there, because that can make a big difference. There were some great programs at the hospital, the occupational therapy, the recreational therapy, really wonderful programs, and there were a lot of patients that stayed there a long time, even though some of the family members say, I don't think she was insane, you know? And it's just a mystery to try to answer some of those questions.
There was a patient when they did decentralization who's been in there since 1899.
Right.
Your mic's on your mic's on, it's turned on.
Okay, well, we've got some pictures up here, and are there any more questions, or do you want to?
Can I put the straight jacket on?
Yeah, let's have everybody try it.
Your wife says I can do it.
Read some other ones.
There it is.
Have yourself. Got your camera. Come on, Kathy. Okay.
We had a summer program. Segment on this. Yes, we can use our screen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see. They're in here. I think I lost it. I know you're enjoying it. I'll give you one.